defend must.
Our next guest says the president's latest edict is the most outrageous example of why Obamacare must be repealed in its entirety. We're joined now by Senator Rand Paul, who joins us from Capitol Hill. Senator, you and Senator Mark Rubio sponsoring legislation called the Religious Freedom Protection Act of 2012. What will be its intended effect?
Well, you know, many of us worried about this with Obamacare, that not only would you be forced to buy insurance, but that a religious institution like a church or a church employer would be forced to cover certain things they find morally objectionable. So our bill would prevent that from happening. It would say to the government, you cannot tell the Catholic Church what type of insurance that they must provide for their employees, or any religious institution, not just the Catholic Church, but any religious institution. You can't tell them that they have to provide a certain type of insurance and it needs to cover certain procedures that they find morally objectionable.
What about those who would argue, Senator, that the First Amendment already guarantees freedom of religion, which would extend to the Catholic Church, its running of hospitals and various charitable organizations? Your response?
Yeah, well, I think it would fall under the First Amendment, and they should be protected. But this is an economic activity, so basically we have to figure out whether or not there's an existing protection, which I think there is, but we're going to reinforce what many think is an existing constitutional protection with legislation. And really, we can't ask people who belong to a religion. The president said, and this is what really the Archbishop Terry Dolan found objectionable, he's going to give them 1 year. And he says, you're going to give me 1 year to change my religious beliefs?
Yeah, and clearly an effort on the part of the administration to buy acquiescence on the part of the church with that 1 year waiver. Let's turn to, speaking of difficult and peculiar laws that are on the books now, and that is, of course, the Lacey Act, involved with you know, very important business in your state of Kentucky. The Lacey Act, in which the United States government, most people I don't think realize this, we have laws on the books that force us to enforce foreign laws in this country. Your response?
You know, I didn't realize anything about this law until I heard about Gibson Guitar being prosecuted, and the fact that Gibson Guitar and their officials could go to jail, not for violating a U.S. law, but for violating a labor law in India. And I was horrified to think that we are enforcing criminal sentences on U.S. citizens for foreign laws. In fact, a couple of U.S. citizens who were fishermen who fished off the coast of Honduras were put in jail for 8 years for violating a Honduran regulation that said your fish needed to be in cardboard boxes and not in plastic wrappers. Unbelievable.
Senator, I want to turn to one other issue, and that is the line item veto. A very popular congressman, Congressman Paul Ryan, and his counterpart on the Democratic side, pushing forward the idea of the line item veto. What would be its future if that legislation arrives in the Senate?
You know, there's been a clamor for something like this before, and one was passed that was found unconstitutional. I think this one will be found constitutional because it requires that the bills come back. If the president marks through them in line item vetoes, they come back and are approved again and sent back to him. So I will favor this. We have to do something in Washington. We're borrowing $40,000 a second. Spending's out of control, and we have to do something differently than what we're doing now.
All right. Senator Rand Paul, as always, good talking with you.
Thank you.